What if I told you America's nuclear deterrent, our ultimate shield, might not be as strong as it should be, just as Russia and China are making nuclear threats? That's what I pressed witnesses on in the Senate Armed Services Committee. Let's go inside that exchange. Our national security depends on it. I asked, is this the right time to weaken our nuclear deterrent? With China expanding and Putin making nuclear threats, the answer is clear. The Admiral confirmed, recapitalizing our nuclear forces is essential. No cuts, no delays.
Senator Hawley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here. Thank you for your service, as always. Admiral, if I could start with you. Just a basic question here. You were just testifying to Senator Cotton. China's a nuclear power, right?
Near peer.
Russia is a nuclear power.
Yes, sir.
You were just amplifying to Senator Cotton your testimony about China being in the midst of a strategic breakout. We see Vladimir Putin making now explicit nuclear threats. Is this a good time to weaken our own nuclear deterrent?
Senator, recapitalization of what we have today is the absolute minimum that we need to do, and we're going to need to further ask ourselves if anything else in posture, capability, and capacity is warranted based on change in threat and what we're learning out of crisis deterrence dynamics right now.
Absolute minimum, you testified. I think that's very important.
I pushed further. Our nuclear forces, I reminded them, are the bedrock of America's strategic deterrent. They don't just keep us safe from nuclear attacks, they support our ability to project power and prevent adversaries from thinking they can intimidate us. The Admiral agreed. If deterrence fails, every other defense plan collapses.
Am I right in thinking that our nuclear forces remain the bedrock of our strategic deterrent?
Not only our strategic deterrent, Senator, but it is integral and foundational to integrated deterrence.
Including our ability to project power and to manage escalation beneath the nuclear threshold. That's what you're talking about, I think.
Senator, no other plan or no other capability in the Department of Defense is going to work if I can't maintain strategic and nuclear deterrence.
Very good. Let me ask you about something you wrote in your testimony. You said prioritizing the crucial NNSA infrastructure modernization programs is the best and only option to pace projected threats and sustain strategic deterrence. We've got in my state, in the state of Missouri, we've got the Kansas City National Security Campus, which supports the nuclear deterrent. We're very proud of that.
I highlighted the importance of nuclear infrastructure in Missouri, at the Kansas City National Security Campus. This facility is critical to modernizing our nuclear deterrent. We're 10 years behind on recapitalizing infrastructure and must rebuild now. Without full funding, America risks losing its ability to deter today's threats.
Can you explain why it is important for us to fully fund NNSA infrastructure modernization?
Senator, we have reached the point where we can no longer deter with the leftovers of the Cold War. We have life extended them to the maximum extent possible. We must now start to recapitalize, remanufacture those. That requires a very robust infrastructure. We have gone far, we're 10 years behind the point where we needed to start recapitalizing the infrastructure, and that's NNSA and actually the rest of the complex. And the consequence is we simply won't have the capabilities that we're going to have to deter the threat environment we're in.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Turning back to China, I reminded the committee that as far back as 2019, China already had nuclear capabilities to coerce the U.S. over Taiwan. Since then, they've only accelerated, developing theater-level nuclear forces and considering lower-yield weapons. China's ability for limited nuclear strikes is growing, and that's a serious danger. That's why we need flexible nuclear options, so adversaries can't think there's a safe threshold for nuclear use.
You told me, switching back to China, Admiral, you said during an appearance before this committee in 2019 to me that China had the capabilities required to threaten or to actually use nuclear strikes to compel the United States to surrender in a potential war over Taiwan. We know that since then China has continued, you were just testifying to this, China's continued to develop its nuclear forces in theater, and Chinese strategists are showing interest in changing their doctrine and also in the need for lower yield nuclear weapons in order to increase the deterrence value of China's force. Is it fair to say that China's ability to engage in limited nuclear employment at the theater level is growing?
Senator, not only yes, if you'll ask me that in closed session, I will give you a very vivid example of what that could do to us.
Very good. Why are limited, if you could just explain for us, why are limited nuclear options, like, for instance, the supplemental capabilities endorsed by the 2018 Nuclear Posture Review, why are those so important for deterring China, or, for that matter, any other adversary that wants to use non-strategic nuclear weapons to coerce us?
Limited nuclear use is deterred differently than the way you deter the classic large attack. And it's designed to make sure that the opponent does not think that there is some threshold below which they could use the nuclear effect, leaving us with a disproportionate response that ultimately winds up self-deterring us.
I turn to the growing threat in space. Analysts say the PLA is preparing for large-scale preemptive strikes, especially over Taiwan. That includes targeting U.S. space assets. The general told Congress, predictable, consistent funding is essential for the Space Force. Without it, we can't build the resilient space architecture needed to maintain our edge.
Very good. General, let me switch to you just in the time I have remaining here. Thomas Schugert's an analyst and others have shown that the PLA is preparing to engage in a large-scale preemptive strike operation at the outside, or would be prepared to engage at the outset of any conflict over Taiwan that we may find ourselves in an attempt to cripple our ability to project power in the Western Pacific. It seems to me we've got to assume Beijing may be incentivized to strike preemptively in space as well, which brings me to my question. What are the most important things that Congress can do this year to support Spacecom's efforts to bolster the resilience of our architecture in space over the next 5 years?
Well, thank you, Senator. So it boils down, and Admiral Richard touched on it, it is that predictable funding. So when I look at the size of the enterprise and the requirements and the capabilities that we need, it all boils down to having a consistent stream of funding that will allow the Space Force and the other services to provide the capabilities that I will need.
Very good. My time's expired. Gentlemen, thank you both again for your testimony. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you.
The message from these witnesses was clear. America's nuclear and space capabilities stand at a crossroads. We can't afford delay or weakness, not with China and Russia watching. To secure peace, we must remain strong.